Okay, now we are starting in 10 seconds. Hello, welcome to our web talk on the future of work. Thank you all very much for joining us. I would like to thank our speakers here in the Zoom conference room from Japan and from Germany, as well as all the participants who are watching the live stream. Welcome, konnichiwa, und guten Morgen nach Deutschland. My name is Laura Bleken, and I'm the program manager at DWIH Tokyo, the organizer of today's event about the future of work. First of all, please let me introduce our 4 distinguished speakers today, who were spontaneous and flexible enough to join our online event. Today we are here with, if you could please wave your hand, Dr. Martin Pohl, Counselor, Labor and Health Affairs from the Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany, Tokyo, and Dr. Matthias Peisner, Head of Human Technology Interaction Research Unit from Fraunhofer Institute for Industrial Engineering, Professor Junichi Tsuji, the Director of the Artificial Intelligence Research Center from IST, the National Institute of Advanced Industrial Science and Technology, and Professor Adisa Ema from the Institute for Future Initiatives of the University of Tokyo. Thank you all for being here. Before we start, please let me say a few words about how this event came into being. About 1 year ago, our colleagues from the Federal Ministry of Education and Research, the BMBF, contacted us and proposed a German-Japanese forum about the future of work. They were planning to visit Japan with a delegation of German research networks to take part in the AI Expo at Tokyo Big Sight. Unfortunately, like so many other events, the Expo as well as our forum had to be cancelled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This is a challenging time for many of us. Closing borders and restricting social contacts has put a huge burden on everyday life. But it also gives us a chance to explore new possibilities. As many of you might know, the DWIH is an abbreviation for Deutsches Wissenschafts- und Innovationshaus, or in English, German Center for Research and Innovation. And therefore, it is somewhat our mission to stay innovative and visionary. And right now, with governments calling for telework and online events, there seems to be a tremendous change in the future of work. And in this regard, this Japanese-German dialogue seems more timely than ever. It is ironic how we are sometimes debating highly advanced research in artificial intelligence, while at the same time we struggle with the simple task of conducting an online event. But this also shows our human side, and it shows that communication between humans and machines is not always easy. What kinds of machines will be found in our future workplace? How will they be adjusted to interact with humans? Or do we, as humans, have to evolve to interact with the machines? Every country finds its own answers to these questions. Today, our 4 speakers will shed light on what is discussed in Japan and in Germany about the future of work, politically and practically. Just before we start, please let me make some logistic remarks. In the first hour, we will listen to the presentations of our 4 speakers. And then in the latter half, that would be 5 p.m. in Japan and in Germany, I think 10 a.m., we will have a panel discussion. In this panel discussion, we are very curious for the questions from the live stream audience. Therefore, dear viewers on YouTube, please post your questions and comments online, either in our online tool or on Twitter with the hashtag DWIH_webtalk. We will then take up your questions in the panel discussion. Now I'm looking forward to the first presentation of our first speaker, Dr. Martin Pohl from the German Embassy. Mr. Pohl, if I may say so, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate. And in fact, it's the right time it's the very right time to do such kind of web talk. Thank you very much for giving also the opportunity. So first, I would like to start to give a very brief introduction of the concepts of Industry 4.0, or in Japan called Connected Industries, and Society 5.0. Industry 4.0 is basically the history of modern economy. So the last 300 years, roughly, the model is focused on technical and economic improvements, and it is open for further improvements in future, whatever may come. Whereas the Society 5.0 is focusing on the last, since human being came into existence, so the last, may say, 40,000 years. The basic concept is that human grew due to improvements in technology, in economics, that is very close related. And as such, it can be called, it is based on historical materialism. So improvement of economy was an improvement of society. And we are now on the last step of possible improvements towards a super smart society, which is a society basically where all humans can enjoy happiness on Earth. That's at least the dream. Now, sorry, just a second. What is then the work of the future? How can we set it into context here? I would like to start with the present situation, which could be called Work 3.0, and which is the equivalent to Industry 3.0. So every industrial stage is, of course, has its equivalent with work. And the Work 3.0 is basically, what is called in Germany social market economy and its globalization. Now, in our days, and we can see that already before, it's not really related to the virus, the emerge of new business models, we have a change in consumption, we have a reshaping of production. That means many current jobs are distracted and many new jobs will be created. So this is the step of going towards Work 4.0, which means integrated working, which means a shift in values, which means a new social compromise. How do companies, and go now on the management level, how do companies implement this new time? And I would like to see it from the working point of view. To explain that, and also for developing by companies, so-called reference architectures are very helpful. In Germany, it's very common, the so-called RAMI 4.0, which is a standardized reference architecture. The idea of this reference architecture is that companies basically transfer their way of doing business into a well-structured virtual system. And of course, part of this system are human interactions, is human work. And each of these human work is then part of the virtual system. The virtual system of one small company can be connected with another small company, many small companies with big companies, and big companies among each other. So basically, by leaving, of course, the individual way of doing things in each company, every company can, within this system, cooperate with other companies, but on a virtual way. Now, how is the Japanese thought? A typical Japanese reference architecture developed by IVI is based on the father of modern Japanese management studies, an American called Deming, who developed the so-called Deming circle. It's plan, do, check, action. So that means it is the way how people, as both first individual, but also in small groups, in bigger groups, act with each other. So that means the cooperation in a company is basically done through work. within a company, within part of company, and of course in between companies. This model is, of course, regarding the individual improvement, much more advanced in that sense that human being is, of course, very complex and can understand the situation much better than a virtual system. However, a human understanding is limited. And there, I think the first model has its strength. To summarize this, both models have their advantages, their disadvantages. Very likely the result at the end will be the same, but the way to it is very different, sometimes quite opposite. Okay, so as we have seen, there is a change in work, there is a change, companies are changing that with different strategies, but the result will be very likely the same. Then let's move on towards the employees. What will or what might happen in the future to different kind of styles of types of work? In 2013, Fry and Osborne conducted a study, and they analyzed which kind of jobs very likely will disappear, where is a high risk, where maybe young people should not really focus their energy on, but rather on other more jobs with a higher possibility of being successful. So to give one example, office and administrative support is maybe not very, has not many good chances because they can be rather replaced by software, by artificial intelligence, etc., etc. Whereas very important in these days, healthcare or education is something which we still also in future need people. Now, reflecting that on the employer's side, I mean, there is always to be a match between both sides. From an employer side, still, and that remains the same as in the past, there has to be a field of competence, but around that field, there are quite big changes. As we can see on this slide, we need technology-related abilities. We should be able to deal with the data. We need to have project organization skills. However, still social competences also will play a future an important role. Good. Then let's move on and let's look not only from the company's perspective, but also from the state's perspective. What is the role of the state? Based on the study of Fry and Osborne, which I mentioned before, the German Ministry of Labor requested a German university to analyze what will happen. Will there be a slaughtering of jobs? Will be millions of unemployed? Well, here we have very good news. If you see on the left column, on the very top, you see that the balance of jobs at most, according to this study, 23,000 jobs will be lost in good case if the implementation of the change will be speedy. 240,000 jobs will be created. So basically, not really to worry about. But what we need to worry about, of course, is, and I mentioned that previously, but also there from an individual or from a company's perspective, now here from the state perspective, that in fact, there will be a big move from jobs on the right side of column, for example, in civil engineering, in the hotel business, or in the public administrations, where many jobs will get lost, whereas in other industries, such as social care, healthcare, management consulting, just as some examples, many new jobs will be created. How about the equivalent of Japan? Research done by METI, Ministry of Industry and Trade. Very similar, basically. We have a job loss in fields such as back office. We have a job loss in manufacturing or procurement, but at the same time, we have a gain of job, for example, in services or in sales, in IT, or upstream jobs. In total, the result, however, is slightly different in Japan. METI expects, in the best case scenario, a loss of total 1.6 million jobs. In worst case, 7.3 million jobs if nothing will be done by the government. However, I mean, as the Japanese population, the working population anyhow is sooner or later shrinking, it means that, yeah, in this context, maybe not so severe a problem. So again, summarizing, very similar situation here between Japan and Germany. The way how the approaches are may be different, but the result very similar. Now, due to that, what did the German government do? They started to do a public project. Many people were involved, finding out that digitalization, globalization, demographic change, education, migration, and last but not least, the transformation of people's values and preferences are in future those topics which government has to carefully look at. A white paper on that was published. Now, what from a Japanese side, also many thoughts were done. One, I think, very interesting was done by the Nippon Steel Research Institute. They developed the idea of a so-called craftsman 4.0, or in Japanese, Takumi 4.0. That is a traditional craftsman, as Japan has, and actually also Germany have wonderful craftsmen, that this craftsmanship is combined with the new technology. I think this idea is a very good match, and it shows us to the next step. What is going then beyond work 4.0 or industry 4.0? And we have already in our mind the society 5.0. And yeah, so you can see that Germany is not stopping there. It's also ongoing, same like Japan. The latest topic which the German Ministry of Labor was doing many activities was and developed together with the Ministry of Science, the so-called National Skills Strategy. The core of that was making more the continuous education of training, lifelong learning, more transparent, bringing employees and employers into responsibility, and of course also joining their forces, sitting together, how to bring companies, how to bring workers forward. Now, coming back, or that's, I think, a nice bridge to society and human resources in Japan. Keidan Ren is, as one of the main promoters of this Society 5.0 concept, has two main focuses or requests to the government. One is an educational reform, and the other one is the securing of professional human resources, as you can see, very similar as outlined as Germany. And of course there, the core problem is people having some know-how in computer science, such as cybersecurity, data science, or international standardization, also related to data. What are the ministries answering? Mainly the Ministry of Trade and Industry. They are very much aware on their research that there are not enough IT human resources available if they do not act. They expect a lack of almost 800,000 computer specialists. So of course, in various levels, but anyhow, the government has to act, and the Japanese government will act. This we can see from the perspective of the Ministry of Science. Next, they have a plan also related to Society 5.0, which is actually not only on the university level, but starting already basically in kindergarten up to the end of university, and then also lifelong learning, providing a variety of learning opportunities, especially for school students, and giving them their basic fundamental abilities. And then that is, I think, a very unique Japanese situation, finding some balance between humanities and science. That is because Japanese university basically has a different function as in other countries, in most other countries. Now, to summarize, and what are the next step related to work in the future, actually both in Work 4.0 and Society 5.0. I just want to use the German example to focus on 6 topics. One is the labor law, which has to be adopted for the new situations, the occupational safety. We find that just in our days with the virus, fostering employability. We have to think about staff representation. We have to think about new types of collective bargaining, and we have to think about pension and accident insurance. Last but not least, a very nice way is, of course, learning from each other. Japan can learn from other countries. Germany can learn from other countries. The Japanese-German cooperation is possible. And one way is so-called online map cooperations provided by METI and also from German Ministry of Economy. Thank you very much. And I'm very much looking forward for the next speakers and for the presentation, for the discussion afterwards. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Pohl, for this overview over not only the German political strategy, but also the Japanese political roadmap of Society 5.0. So after this political overview, we will now gain some practical insights from Dr. Peisner from the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany, who will give us some insights about what is practically discussed now about the collaboration between humans and machines. Mr. Peisner, could you switch on your mic, please? Yes, might be difficult during the mode and screen sharing. Yeah. If it's at the left bottom. Yes, I hear you now. Hello?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now you can hear me now?
Yes,
and
we
you
can
see
hear
the
you.
full screen presentation?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Okay, so the title of my presentation is AI, Artificial Intelligence at Work. How can we shape the collaboration between man and machine? The discussion about the future of work is often dominated by the question how work will be split between man and intelligent machines. So the question is, will robots take over all of our jobs? How much work will be left for the human workers? And this discussion frightens many people. And I think this discussion is also very misleading because I am convinced that the future of work is not about man or machine, but it's mainly about the question how man and machine will collaborate. And I think this collaboration will be much, much closer than the kinds of human-machine interactions we have today, because when we talk about the future of work, we also have to talk about artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is for sure one of the major drivers of change in our work life. And artificial intelligence will be one of the big game changers in our society as well, not only at work, but in all aspects of our daily lives. Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, he even compared the impact of artificial intelligence with the discovery of electricity or fire. So these are very heavy changes, a very heavy transformation. And the reason for this heavy impact is that the rise of artificial intelligence really means a paradigm shift in how technology works. It means we have now computers, we have increased computing power, big data available, and now machine learning algorithms can detect patterns, can classify situations, can find correlations, calculate and play through multiple options for decisions and actions, and can optimize processes towards defined goals, and all without the need for humans to program all the intelligence in advance, but the computers can learn on their own. And it is clear that those countries and enterprises who master this technology will have a great advantage, and therefore it's no surprise that there's a global competition. At the moment, it seems that especially the USA and China are leading countries here, and we in Germany and in Japan, we have to find our way to compete with all these big powers. And here in Germany, we have the German Mittelstand, the small and medium-sized companies. Also in Japan and Germany, we have our industrial engineering, Industry 4.0, as we heard. And we have our democratic and humanistic values. Last April, the European high-level experts group on AI, they published ethical guidelines for trustworthy AI. And I think these guidelines pretty well summarize how we in Europe think that AI systems should work. We think that AI systems should not, in the first place, substitute human work, but AI systems should empower humans to augment their skills and to support their autonomy. AI systems should prevent harm, especially in situations where we have unequal powers, as with employers and employees. AI systems should support equal opportunities and overcome discrimination and bias. And AI systems should be explainable. It should be transparent how they work, not only for the developers, but also for those who are working with them, who are directly or indirectly affected by their decisions and actions. And I find it very remarkable that we in Europe, we don't consider these ethical principles as breaking blocks for our economic progress and technological progress, but we put these ethical guidelines upfront as one of our competitive advantages, because we think that intelligent systems with these properties will be successful not only in Europe, but also in other parts of the world. But still, very many people are afraid of losing their jobs, are afraid of intelligent systems substituting human work. And as we heard in the last presentation by Dr. Pohl, most of the scientific studies about the problem of substituting human work show that that AI and digitization will create even more jobs than the jobs substituted by intelligent technology. Here we see a study from Germany where you can see that the number of old and new jobs is equal nearly, but the work will be very different, and we will need very different competencies. We will have less executive tasks, we will have more overviewing, controlling, and planning tasks. And therefore, qualification will be one of the most important success factors in Germany and in Japan, and I think all over the world, because when I say qualification, I mean a general readiness for change. And I think we need this readiness for change at all levels, not only on the individual level, but also on the enterprise level. In the enterprises, in the companies, we need technical and organizational infrastructures to identify very early new skill requirements and to make sure that these skills can be built up very timely. Because one of the biggest problems is that it's often very difficult to know today what skills and competencies we will need tomorrow. And the other thing is that I think the companies will really need to have something to offer to their employees. They have to offer interesting perspectives and also ways for personal growth and development, so that every employee should experience the upcoming transformation as an individual opportunity and not as a threat. And I think one of the most important things here in this field of qualification is that we really need to make sure that we can avoid a digital divide. And qualification is not only important because work will be different, but as we see from one of our recent studies, work will also be more demanding, more varied, more responsible. It will be very, for some of us, it will be more difficult. But on the other hand, we see that work will also be more interesting. And this gives us a hint that there might be good opportunities and great potential for each individual worker to have not only a more demanding job in the future, but also better work, a more interesting work in the future. In one of our recent projects, we work with a public energy supplier to help them optimize their processes in the customer service. And our goal was to support the employees and to improve the service quality by standardized processes. And therefore, we digitize the entire workflow of complaint management, and we use artificial intelligence where helpful. And on the slide, you see a schematic sketch of the system. Now we have a system in place which is able to cluster incoming complaints and to route them automatically to the right place. There are a couple of standard complaints that can be processed completely automatically, that can be answered completely automatically. And for the majority of cases, the complaints are directed, routed to agents. And these agents are now supported by the system, which analyzes the incoming texts, detects similarities, and provides text modules for the agents to use when they answer the complaints. And in this case, we see that only a few standard processes can be fully automated. And in all the other cases, in the majority of cases, we require teamwork of man and machine. And this is also one of the biggest claims and assumptions in Duffy and Wilson's book, Human Plus Machine. And I think this is a very recommendable book. They point out that the greatest potential of artificial intelligence lies in the interaction with human workers. Because on the one hand, artificial intelligence systems require humans in the programming and development of the system, but also in the training, because machine learning requires training data and people who train the system. Then we need people who explain the outcomes of artificial intelligence systems, because very often the results of AI systems are based on huge data, and it's not so easy to understand the mechanisms. So we need people to explain, but we also need people to sustain these systems, because once an AI system is up and running, we need people to oversee if the system performs well. We need people to detect unwanted drifts, and we need people to validate and correct the system's behavior and outcomes. And on the other hand, there's the big promise that AI gives us humans superpowers. And what does it mean? I'll give you a couple of examples. For example, we can use new interaction technologies, AI-based interaction technologies, such as gesture recognition, such as object detection, to make the interaction with technology very intuitive and make it very easy. So for example, when you think of programming robots, a task which is very demanding, which required a very high level of expertise, now we can use object detection and gesture recognition to enable even blue-collar workers to create their own robot programs, or at least to help them to adapt existing programs to their individual needs. The second is organized work processes. Often the system is very complex, and it makes it hard for us to find the best decision and to organize our work. Here, AI and especially machine learning can help to find our way through complexity. Then the very important field of knowledge management can also be supported by artificial intelligence. For example, AI systems can detect successful strategies. AI systems can learn from experienced colleagues, can extract knowledge and expertise from their observations and make their knowledge available, accessible for other people. The fourth is decision support. AI can help us to make well-informed decisions, even in situations in which we are not very competent. For example, if we have a digital model of our field of work, AI can try out all possible decision options, can simulate the effects and help us to make the best decision. And last but not least, AI can enable something we could call sensitive technology. For example, we are working on technologies like brain-computer interfaces and other sensors to recognize mental states in real time, mental states such as attention, emotion, stress levels, concentration and mental workload. And we can use this information to adapt task schedules to human needs. And we can provide feedback to the human workers about their mental states so that they can use this on their own for self-optimization and for their individual well-being. But as you can see from these examples, artificial intelligence is a very strong and a very effective tool, and therefore we must be very careful to design these kinds of solutions in a reasonable way and in a very responsible way. I'll give you an example from a project we did with Freudenberg. They have assembly lines. These are semi-automated assembly lines. In these assembly lines, one worker is overseeing more than one machine. It's a whole line, and they are controlling several machines. And as long as everything is going well here, the workers have their standardized procedures and everything is clear. But as soon as there's an error or an exception, the workers have to decide from their own experience what to do next. And this is sometimes very difficult. And so we came in to develop an algorithm to find out the best possible work progress, the best possible work process, based on what we know from the machinery, from the orders in the MES system and so forth. And as a second step, we developed a visualization system to instruct the workers what to do next. And here you see we had LED stripes on the floor to show the worker where to go next. We had a second smart watch app to provide personalized information, and an overview to give a display to give an overview of the whole line. And now this system is in pilot testing in a British factory, and everything seems to be fine. But for me, it's only now that the project really starts, because we know from other similar systems, for example, from logistics, that people who are guided from task to task by lights and vibration often experience these systems as permanent stress and permanent pressure. We see permanent psychological load, increased sickness rates as a consequence. And so the question is, how can we design such a system so that the workers really experience this system as a real support, that they have the feeling that the system really give them superpowers, that the system makes them more efficient, more productive, and that they can decide autonomously what to do next, that they can bring in their own experience, their own knowledge, and they really have the feeling that together with the intelligent system, they can improve the process and contribute to the success of their company. So this is a real big design challenge to decide and to design work systems of the future which are using artificial intelligence. So as a summary, we see that AI is a key technology to master central challenges of future work, such as global competitiveness, participation, and personal growth. We see also that we need experiments to learn. We have to try out things. We have to learn from pilot and from first implementations in practice, and to adjust our regulation as well. And we see that the work design matters. We need a good attitude. We need to make sure that we are transparent about the aims, and we need to make sure that the human technology interaction is human-centered. And then, last but not least, I think we are really challenged to think in new ways. We have to establish new concepts. One big example is how should we manage personal data. At the moment, we are trying to avoid every situation where we collect personal data, but I think in the future we really need to collect personal data and to use this personal data very responsibly. And so I think this transformation towards an artificial intelligence work, this challenges us to think in new ways and to develop new concepts of the future of work. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Feisner, for these examples of the collaboration between humans and machines. We already got a couple of questions in our question form online, and I'm looking forward to discussing them later. But before that, we would like to have a look at what is discussed in Japan. And therefore, I would like to give the microphone to Professor Tsuji from the Artificial Intelligence Research Center from ICE. Professor Tsuji, the stage is yours. Please remember to switch on your mic. Right now we cannot hear you. And Mr. Peisner, maybe you can switch your mic off. Professor Tsuji, we still cannot hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Thank you.
About the slide which I want to share.
Yeah.
Can you see me?
Yes, now we see your presentation, and you have to start the presentation mode, then it will be fine.
Okay. So, okay, my talk is maybe in the similar direction of the previous speaker. That is, I also want to emphasize interaction between AI systems and humans will be crucial in the future of AI development. And a bit of an introduction of myself. In Japan, we have 3 research centers established under the Japanese government. One center is ours, which is embedded in AIST, which is quite similar to Fraunhofer. And we have a special center for artificial intelligence research. That was established 2015. So we've been in the world for 5 years now. And because of the nature of our institute, which is under Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, we are very much focused on deployment of AI technologies to the society. And the other 2 research centers, one is under Ministry of Education, embedded in RIKEN. They are more concerned with basic research aspects of AI. And then another one is was established by Ministry of Internal Affairs and Telecommunications. They are more interested in communication aspect of AI, like speech translation and so on, so forth. So I'm a director of AI Research Center under ICE. And again, as the previous speaker said, the AI research and businesses have been largely dominated by big IT companies in the States and also some conglomerate of state and private enterprise in China. And we, means Japan, should have our own strategy, which is we think that AI is still its incipient stage. That means AI will affect much broader aspects of the society, including medical care, healthcare, elderly care, smart city design, manufacturing, and so on and so forth. That is just beginning of those diverse application field in the society. And also Japan, as well as other European countries, have their own industry, which are not really part of big IT giants like manufacturing and our own service sectors and so on. So we have to be careful to utilize those resources, especially human resources of those fields. Manufacturing, we have a very sort of talented engineers or scientists in that field, medical applications and healthcare as well. So we have to think the methodology by which we can exploit our human resources effectively in order to, in a sense, protect our industry and our competitiveness as a society as a whole. So we try to draw our own strategy, which may have more sort of prominent role of the public sector, not only the private sectors, but also medical care, for example. We need a more public sector involvement. And also we have to have proper regulation of the usage of personal medical records and so on and so forth. So we need proper coordination in that field as well. So we have our own strategy which emphasizes the importance of a human in the whole adventure or endeavor of artificial intelligence deployment. And this is quite of a simplified view of artificial intelligence and human intelligence. So AI is very powerful, but they are based on observed data. They have a huge data from the real world. But observation of the real world is always partial. They cannot observe everything. But on the other hand, human beings have rather restricted observation of the real world, but we also have more rational understanding of the real world through formal education or building up system of science. For example, medical, clinical practices, not only based on data, but also clinical diagnosis are supported by big accumulation of knowledge of medical science. So those are knowledge educated new doctors, and doctors combine data and also those understanding what's happening in the real world behind the data. So the two intelligence have a quite different characteristics. AI have, in a sense, some powerful aspect based on big data, but their decision making are fairly restricted since observations are always partial of the real world. But human intelligence may be based on restricted, limited data, but we have a system of science and knowledge and so on. So both intelligence have pros and cons. So we need to enhance both intelligence, from human to AI, we can add more knowledge, more rational thinking into the system, and AI can explain what kind of decision they make based on what kind of data and so on. So in that way, we can increase the understanding of the real world by human beings and also by the AI system as well. So in that sense, that interaction of these two different kinds of intelligence would be crucial in the real world, in the future AI deployment. So our center always claims that AI should be embedded in the real world, not for the sake of research on intelligence, but rather AI should be techniques for solving challenging problems in the real world. And the second claim is AI should be able to cooperate with human beings. AI shouldn't be closed autonomous system. That should be open autonomous system that can explain their process of decision making or accommodate human advice what to do. So those two autonomous systems, AI and human, have to be able to cooperate in an effective way. So AI can be discussed in various different contexts. The first context is digital transformation. So digital transformation changed the society quite drastically and will change human way of life in the future more and more significantly. And the other is those digital transformation affect everything, not only human ways of life, but human way of performing research or innovation. So in that sense, Society 5.0 and Science 5.0 cooperate with together. Society 5.0 claims that we can build a certain model by data from the real world. And based on that model, we can intervene the real world to make the society more livable or happy and so on. On the other hand, so Science 5.0 or Engineering 5.0 is use digital means to understand what's happening in the real world or scientific field. So understanding and intervention of the real world have to be integrated properly. So that means not only intervening, but also AI have to be a tool by understanding the real world together with scientists and engineers as well. So this is a typical example of AI. The left-hand side is a real world, and the right-hand side is a cyberspace modeling. And based on that modeling, AI system can decide which way that robot have to navigate. But this kind of paradigm become more and more powerful. In these days, not only AI sensing the real world, but also environment acquiring the data from the from environment. So AI system can access to that the data in the observed by other sensors in the environment. So based on those data, that robot can navigate from one place to the other to avoid congested areas or some kind of future prediction where some parts are congested and so on and so forth. And this is a robot which are quite different from traditional robot, the robot which can respond to the changes of the environment responsibly. So it's another kind of development of AI systems which can be embedded in the real world. And the other factor we have to think about is AI in the context of competition and cooperation. For example, right now, AI research and development, as I said before, have been dominated by big IT companies in the States and in China. So we have to build up our own infrastructure, including big computer infrastructures, which can be used by public sectors as well. So we build up those infrastructures as well. So the second is AI can be existential threat. That means a closed autonomous system of AI can use a human as a tool. Not human uses AI as a tool. The opposite may happen. So what we need is, as I said before, the two autonomous systems of intelligence have to be cooperate together. So our center try to develop new technologies for cooperation between AI systems and human beings by introducing explicit representation of knowledge or some kind of digital twins based on traditional simulation model in manufacturing sector. And that can be combined data-oriented method by AI to make AI systems more friendly to human intelligence. So we use all our time. So what I want to emphasize is we cannot solve all problems by our own. So we need cooperation with, for example, European partners and also private sectors as well. So our center is very much interested in cooperating with partners like Fraunhofer or some German institute. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Tsuji, for these insights into the Japanese dialogue about the recent developments in the human-machine interaction and the activities, of course, of ICE and AIRC. So let me just answer to one question I saw we already got in the question form. There was one question if the presentations will be made available after this event. I have to admit I haven't asked the speakers about that yet, but what I can already tell you is that the live stream will stay online on YouTube, so you can rewatch all the presentations. and we will check about the presentation files and inform you by email later.
I cannot find to.
Yes, I think now you switched your mic off. Was that probably the button?
How about the screen?
The screen is actually on YouTube. It's not the same screen as here, so we can leave that to the YouTube live stream. It will be a different screen. Okay, so we are now hearing the chime in Japan. It's 5 o'clock every day in Japan. We have this chime at 5 o'clock. Yeah, I think everyone in Japan is already used to it. For our listeners from Germany, it might be a bit special, but nothing to worry about. But it tells us that we are already a bit over the time with our last presentation. Nevertheless, it would be great if Professor Adisa Ima could also use the full 15 minutes. And I think we then still have left 45 minutes for the Q&A, which should be enough. So Professor Ima, if I can hand the mic over to you, it would be great if you could stick to your time, that we have enough left for the panel discussion in the end.
So hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, and my slides. Okay, great. So hi, nice. Thanks for your introduction, Laura. My name is Arisa Emma, and I am actually a social scientist. So I would like to talk more about the social aspect, the ethical aspect about the human-machine collaboration in this Society 5.0 environment. So in Japan, we often hear that the phrase that AI and robots will solve the social problems. But on the other hand, we also hear that AI and robots will create other new social problems. And this actually contains the ethical, social, and the legal, economical, all the other issues. So therefore, what we have to do is that we need to consider what kind of society we want to live in and how to design the society and technologies to the end. I think what we've already discussed actually kind of talked about these issues. So in order to do so, we need to have some conceptual investigation to unpack underlying assumptions of the concept to start a cross-cultural and interdisciplinary dialogue. And I think we are right now doing this in a nice way. So recently, already some people actually showed, but what is unique in Japan and also maybe in Germany as well is that we are currently entering a super aging society, which more than 27% of the population is actually over 65 years old. And it is said that in 2050, about 38% will be over 65-year-old. And this aging of society is one of the reasons that Japan is actively expecting the introduction of artificial intelligence and the robotics. Also, this McKinsey report showed that the percentage of current work activities displaced by automation from 2016 to 2030. It shows that the Japan could be the #1 countries that workers' job would be replaced by machines. You could see this, the Japan in the very top here. So considering about the future work, everyone says that there are concerns and whether our work should be replaced by machines. However, many researchers are saying that it's not the work that is being replaced, but rather tasks being replaced. So you wouldn't be said that your work will be totally replaced by the machines, but your work can be divided into a couple of tasks, and some of them can be replaced or maybe supported by the machines. So in short term, machines wouldn't take our entire jobs. Well, I would say in short terms. And each of the experts has a lot to do, and some of their tasks has been replaced by the robots, and some wouldn't be. And even it can be replaced by machines, it doesn't actually mean it should be replaced by machines. I think we already discussed that some of the works, for example, like the doctor's work or like the military work, even if it can be replaced by machines, if we have some kind of responsibility to take, then the human beings should take the roles and the responsibility of that task. So the question is, what kind of tasks we want to be replaced by the artificial intelligence or robots? That's, I think, the question we all have to consider in the current situation. So today's artificial intelligence and machine learning can do actually three things. So first is the pattern recognition. Images, voices, and text can be searched and automatically classified. For example, this technology is capable of detecting anomality or like abnormalities in factory or in like a disease detection. The second is the prediction and also the profiling. Data can be used to assess risks such as disease or like the finances. And AI can also do person-to-person matching and profiling, things like a credit scoring, so that we all know that the China is ahead of these technologies. And we can also even recommend features and nudges people based on the big data. And I think this is kind of the worries that actually we all have, like Professor Tsuji said, that we can be controlled by the machines or nudged by machines. And also finally, AI can execute single tasks. For example, it can automatically generate images and voices or like texts. We all kind of considers that the deep fake exploit that auto-generation technology, and it creates fake images and videos, and that is also becoming a huge debate. And it can threaten like the democracy and all the existing values. So automatic recognition, prediction, and execution is convenient, and sometimes it makes our works or tasks more efficient. However, on the other hand, it is necessary to consider from the design stage whether technology should be regarded as a tool to support human work, or whether it should be assigned with a certain degree of autonomy. So I think we are talking about what's the roles between like humans and machines, and the previous presentation actually nicely demonstrated what kind of task or what kind of jobs can be done by machines and what can be done by humans. And here in this diagram, I'm kind of dividing it by the risks perspectives. So with the support of machines, it makes our works more efficient. However, it is necessary to consider the roles and responsibilities of human beings when using technology, especially if it's autonomous. So we have to consider what kind of tasks can be left to technology, considering the accuracy of technology and also the degree of risks. This diagram shows the degree of human involvement according to the probability and the severity of harms and risks. So here, I'm not sure whether you could see the cursors, the arrows here, but when it comes to things at the high risk and the high severity, humans should not depend on the decisions only made by technology, and it needs to be supervised its internal actions. That is, humans should be in the loop. However, for the tasks that are low in both risk and depth, like the severity here, we can leave most of the tasks to the machines and deal with them after a problem occurs. So we can actually dependent on the task that machine does. So here, human beings can be out of the loop. In this aspect, humans has a role to play in cooperation. So, but here in if the tasks that are at a low risk or like a low severity, we can use artificial intelligence as a tool and only check the result, but it sometimes goes wrong. So the human beings have to push somehow emergency stop button to stop machines. In this aspect, human has a role to play in cooperation with machines, or maybe as a part of the machine. So this is the most difficult part of human and machine cooperation. So we cannot totally depending on the machines, or we cannot totally control the machines, but we should look into what machine is doing, and we should press the emergency stop button. And if there's an accident or mistakes, getting control back into the human beings can be essential, but it is actually a very difficult thing, even for the experts. For example, research into the causes of airplane accidents suggests that many of these are due to pilots' lack of manual flight skills. So in 2009, Air France Flight 447 actually crashed into the sea just 4 minutes after the speed meter failed. It is said that this was because that the pilot, who was actually intended to be an expert in this field, could not make a quick decision on the unexpected failure of the equipment. This case implies the difficulty that even if the system is designed that the human can press this emergency button, it will be an issue whether the workers or the pilots are appropriately trained. So the more automation advances, the more human beings have to work without the expertise. If we make mistakes and the machine fixes it automatically, we won't notice it. So this is a dilemma of allowing people to work with a machine without expertise while actually requiring highly skilled professionals if the system fails. So this challenge is I think it's crucial when we actually introduce the machine into our workplace. And it also actually questions how to nurture the experts in the fields. Also, there are other questions on the working style. So efficiency can be achieved not only by reducing labor costs, but also by reducing time and money spent on each task. So in particular, in areas where B2B, like business to business, plays a large role, such as transportation or inspection, optimization by artificial intelligence can lead to significant time and financial savings. But once streamlined, the next year will not be dramatically efficient. It is an important point of view that pursuing only efficiency and optimization will eventually meet the ceiling of quantitative growth in which no further reduction in time or cost is possible. So it is important to understand that the reduction of labor and financial cost through efficiency is not equivalent to creating new value qualitatively more than fast or cheap. So the future vision must determine whether the surplus time and money will be used to pursue for the quickness or cheapness, or whether it will be used to develop new values such as human well-beings. For example, we once conducted a research, and I have one person saying from a company said that they wanted to increase well-being of the employees by increasing their holidays rather than cutting labor costs. So it may be possible to create a work management model that does not mean reducing the number of workers or laborers or making them work more in their spare time ahead of schedule, but can contribute their spare time for more well-being to the workers. So this story tells that it is necessary not only to improve work efficiency by using artificial intelligence, but also to review working styles, performance, or the evaluation, and also the cultural aspects. We have to consider what kind of value we wanted to provide, not only to our customers or the society, but also to the employees as well. But it's not easy to figure out what this new value is or what the human well-being means. So when we try to think a new service and add value based on technology needs, the goal often becomes to use the new technology, and it's actually sometimes forgot to look into what kind of the social problems that we faces. For example, in the era of this aging population, services such as like AI taking care of the elderly parents or like the children on behalf of the busy women may be conceivable. However, behind this promotion of this kind of system has the premise that it is the woman who cares for the elderly and children. So technology can empower caretakers. In this means like a woman can manage by themselves with the support of machines. But on the other hand, it will be used to support and lock in these existing customs, and it may deprive people of opportunity to question the existing ideas. So we tend to consider that technology can solve the problems, but mostly we can solve problems by considering other variables such as like institutions and also the human values. Technology is just one of the variables, and the fact that there are many other variables that we can move around. So we when we consider from like a technology side, we kind of tend to think that only technology can, well, it might be easier to think that the technology will solve the problem. But I think it somehow is not it's the, like the Professor Tsuji said, the world is not so easy as we expect. So the artificial expected to increase productivity and the cost. On the other hand, the reasons why the introduction of technology has not made much progress in and also the little attention paid is not only technology, but we have to look into like a working styles or the social system, human relations, and the role of experts. So it's not only the technology we have to look in, but we have to look into other variables. The people working in this field will require to respond to new challenges by comparing their abilities with the ever-changing environment and technologies. So at present, it is necessary to establish a framework for cooperation among the people and the machines or artificial intelligence in light of the mechanism of the employees or the consumers and society as a whole. Thank you. That's all for my presentation.
Thank you very much, Adisa, and also thank you for sticking to the time. That means we have 45 minutes left for our panel discussion, and we've already very many questions in the online forum. Just before we start the discussion, please let me tell you again that you're also very welcome to discuss between each other. So if you have a comment on something another speaker says, please raise your hand and then I can hand the mic to you. I hope we will, it will work this way. So I tried to sort the questions in 4 categories because otherwise we might not be able to take in all of them. And actually there were quite many questions about ethics. So maybe Adisa, if I can just get back to you about your last presentation. We had a quite general question. I think that might be also nice to start with. There was the question in Japanese, how the ethical discussion concerning the future of work is different in Japan and in Germany. I mean, that's very broad. And I think, Adisa, you're not an expert on Germany, I guess, but maybe from what you hear about Europe, also the European discussion and the Japanese discussion, what is your impression? Where's a big difference?
Thank you. I'm not expert in German side, but so maybe I would like to ask the other panelists, but I think there's actually a lot of ethical discussion about this artificial intelligence, the robotics, automation here also in Japan, and I guess in German as well. But one of the big concern is about this. I think the machine would be taken, the human beings would be taken just by the machines, and what would be the human beings' role and the expert's role. So I think that is one big concern, and regarding the artificial intelligence. However, linked to that question, as I mentioned in my presentation, the responsibility issue. So who takes the responsibility when something goes wrong? I think that is a very big concern in Japan. And so I think it's not only the ethical, but it's also the legal issues. So who will actually, for example, takes the responsibility and suit? Is it the company, or is it the people who actually use the technology? Or so that kind of thing is, I think, still not clear in any country. So I guess what we are doing is currently working on that perspectives. And so I think, well, I'm kind of like talking about what's being discussed in Japan. So I would like to hear is it similar in Germany, or is it different in the field? Yeah.
Yes, please, Mr. Peisner.
I'm also not very firm in the Japanese discussion, but I think where a big difference could be between Germany or Europe and Japan might be the question of emotional bonds with technology. And I think about the example of care robots or robots in the homes. And I think that Japan is has had a big progress in that field already. And here in Germany or in Europe, when it comes to ethical guidelines, we always have to be very careful about creating emotional bonds with technology. There is always the guideline to make very transparent that this is a technological system. It's not a human being. And to create something like emotional dependency or attachment with technology is something where we in Europe, I think we have some concerns about that. I can imagine that this is one of the differences between Japan and Germany. And I think that technology, we should really make much more progress and much more research in that direction. How can we use technology also in that emotional field and to provide advantages and to provide new ways of connecting between people and so forth. And I think we have some concerns here. Maybe we are a little bit too careful in that area.
Yes, maybe Professor Tsuji, can I also ask you about your opinion about that? You even spoke about the co-evolution of humans and machines. So do you think in Japan it is actually not that much difficult to think that humans and machines somehow evolve together and have the emotional connection also?
Yeah, I don't know whether that is kind of a big difference between Europe and Japan, but Japanese people tend to think intelligence as a continuum of things like human beings and other animals, or even robots have some intelligence. We allow those existence to be intelligent. But I don't know, European people tend to think a human rational thinking or some reasoning capabilities are somewhat specific to human beings. So they tend to distinguish human and the rest. That may be some kind of a difference between Europe and Japan. And Japan, for example, robot in care environment, Japanese are more accommodating. But Europe tend to think a robot is a kind of alien existence, and which involved in elderly care sounds a bit threatening. That part, I think, somewhat different between two societies. But I don't know whether that is essential difference or something quite surface type of distinction. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Pohl, maybe you could also give us your opinion on that. You talked about the differences also between society 5.0 and, well, industry 4.0. And yeah, as the name says, society is also thinking of a human being, right? So maybe there is also a bit of a difference to be found in how in Japan this issue is approached.
Well, I would like to focus on my experiences from a management point of view. I found that in Japan, engineers are thinking very deeply and carefully what they are going to do. And before they pass forward a certain product, a technical product, they are really, really very attentive. Once it has left their group, then I think there is a natural way and there won't be any more discussion. Whereas in Germany, I feel it's rather the opposite way. There are many compliance people in the company checking on a higher hierarchical level what the individual engineers are doing. Maybe that is reflecting to the two model and approaches which I presented before, these reference architectures, which of course represent different ways of thinking. So that could be somehow an approach when developing such kind of products. And of course, then the customer at the end will decide about that, of course.
Yeah, Alisa?
Yeah, thank you. So I also come up with another differences. So the emotional bonds is also a very interesting point, but also organizing this Japan, France, and the Germany trilateral events. And I hear that lots of concerns and interest from German side for the environment. So I guess, for example, like in Japanese businesses, like I said, like the efficiency, like the productivity is kind of like the main aim for using the artificial intelligence. However, I think in Germany, more interest is on for like whether it can reduce the CO2 emission or whether it is good for the environment. And so that kind of the differences in, well, I wouldn't say that Japan is not kind of aware of this environmental issues, but the priority is quite different. And I think that may also reflect to the values that or the priority which the Japanese and the German sides actually have.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, actually, the DWIH Tokyo also did an event last year on AI and environment. So yeah, we had a lot of very interesting trilateral discussions, and you can also, dear viewers on YouTube, you can also watch it in another recorded live stream you find in our channel. So let me get back to the questions from the audience. We were talking about ethical questions now, and we had two more specific questions about data. There was one question about how data biases in AI-powered systems are discussed in Japan. I know this is a big issue in some countries when the data, well, there's a data bias, and based on this data, AI will find decisions which might not reflect the reality. Yeah, I think maybe Professor Arisa would be the next one to answer this question, because I think this also relates to your field of research, right?
So the question is what's the Japan and Germany or considering about the data bias?
Yes, actually just Japan in this question.
Japan regarding this the works data bias.
Yeah, about data biases.
Yeah, so I guess data biases, algorithm biases is becoming huge debate here in Japan as well. And as I mentioned that, for example, like the in Japan, there was the debate on like the recruiting company actually use the data and or not the Japanese, but also we were kind of considering about what kind of data can be used for example, like a profiling and also the predicting to create this the credit score. And we also have this kind of concern. And but it's sometimes really difficult to say what's the bias is. So for example, if in Japan, we like the Professor Tsuji said, the real world data is quite different from like the cyber world data, and sometimes it is we have difficulty of gathering all the data from the real world, and we cannot say so we can try and say that so we actually gathered all the data, and we can be transparent and say that we use this data to create the algorithm or this system. But it's sometimes really difficult, even if we are criticized that we are not using all the data, but it's sometimes difficult to gather the data because there might be some kind of privacy issues. And so what we can do for right now is to be more inclusive, and we need some kind of a check mechanism whether this data is enough or whether it is possible to get more diverse data from other places, or maybe we can say that for now this data would be okay, but if we can get another data, then we can try to involve more data. So yeah, the data and algorithmic bias is a very big issue. But another thing I wanted to mention is that a human being is also biased, and sometimes it's really difficult to say which. Sometimes, for example, in the recruitment, we cannot, understand. We cannot say like the human being why the human being is selected these people. Maybe they choose them based on their instinct, or maybe they are from the same university, or in that sense the machines can be more transparent or more explainable because they have this kind of the design phase. So I think we need some kind of collaboration between machine and human beings. So machine might have biases, human being also may have the biases, and we are not perfect enough, both machine and humans. But the combination of this both imperfect entities, we can build a better world. So I think it's very, very difficult to omit all these biases, and sometimes it takes a lot of time and also money to remove these biases, or maybe we need some kind of education to remove these biases, and we have to continue this kind of endeavor to reduce the biases. But for now, AI, the machine, is not perfect. Human being is also not perfect. We also need some kind of education, but we can learn from each other. We can learn from other people, so that thing, I think, what we are learning today in our society.
Yeah, thank you very much. Maybe I can add a follow-up question, which was asked during the presentation of Mr. Peisner. And here our viewer wanted to know, if I may just read the question, on top of explainability, how do you think mechanisms for workers to contest AI decisions can be integrated or assured? So how can we actually contest as humans the decisions made by AI, which might be biased due to data? Could you maybe share your insights on that? Especially, and it says also especially related to HR decisions, so human resources.
So the question is, how can we correct the decisions? I think it's a very interesting point to think about. How should we design those systems? How should we provide mechanisms for the user to better understand, but also to correct decisions? And I think there are very many ways. For example, in that project example I showed with the assembly line, we are currently working on a detection mechanism that detects as soon as the user does something different from what the system suggested, and we use this this differing behavior as an input for the system in a way of a reinforcement learning, so that we punish the system decision in a way if the user does something different, and we give a positive reward if the user is following the system recommendation. So this system will learn from the user's behavior implicitly, but we could also think of explicit mechanisms where the user can say, okay, you suggest this, or I think the best way for the system in any case might be to provide different options, and not only one best option, but to say, okay, these are the three favorite options, and to provide choosing, and then the user can decide which to take.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Professor Tsuji, do you also have some ideas how we can implement the correction by humans?
I don't know whether that is a problem of technology or a basic problem of judgment of people. For example, even in human resource section, if someone evaluates some other people's performance, and that judgment by human beings may be different from the people who are being evaluated. So there should be some kind of mechanism of contesting some judgment by either that is AI system or a human, the people who are evaluated have to have some channel of contest. That is not really technological issues. It's more system, how to build in that kind of safety net of decision making based on wrong data or wrong intuition, whatever. So there should be some social system to contest. That not only human resource, but also medical diagnosis and everything. That means any judgment by AI system have to be traceable as much as possible, and then some kind of system of contest to the certain judgment. That is have to be considered as a safety net, as a system, not technological problem.
Yes, thank you very much. So I would like to move on to the next question, which is also still in the ethics category. And this goes back to the problem of job loss due to AI. We had the very general question of what kind of jobs will be lost because of AI. I think that was already partly answered in the presentation of Mr. Pohl. But then there was also a follow-up question to Mr. Peisner. And here our viewer, Mr. Karpenstein, said, human-machine collaboration sounds wonderful, but what about the unskilled laborer whose work will be replaced by machines? So I think this goes in the direction of actually these new jobs that will be created are for everyone, or if they are only for some specific people with specific skills.
In my presentation, I also tried to emphasize the fact that we will have, or we are working on assistance systems that can also help, for example, impaired workers to contribute to the work life of today by, for example, compensating human problems or impairments We have also systems, for example, similar to what I showed in the example, like pick by light situations or other instructions made possible by augmented reality that can help also people with lower qualification levels to participate in the work life and to contribute to our economy. And I think there's a lot of things we can do to motivate also people with lower qualification levels to keep on learning and to keep on developing their own, so that they can get into new activities. I think this was one of another claim of another presentator, that we will not substitute complete jobs, but mainly activities. And so I think one of our big challenges will be to keep all the people who are able to work and who want to work, and to provide measures so that they can develop themselves, that they can learn new things, and that they can really grow into new tasks.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Pohl, do you also think this is feasible from the political perspective?
Well, it might be a challenge. However, I mean, already now we have a certain percentage of people in the age where they are supposed to work who, for whatever reason, are not working. I mean, the reasons are very, very diverse. What politics can do is, and actually politics is doing that in both Germany and Japan, is giving help by trying to train these people, by giving subsidies to companies who are helping that these people are hired by them. However, one thing is very clear. We see that this is something which is coming in the future, so it might be in the near future, but we cannot really predict the future precisely. So it's crucial to think about that, to keep this in mind, not forget about these people, act quickly when a certain potential of, let's say, people who drop out of society, to care for them or to give them chances. Maybe it's not possible really to care for them, but to give them chances to try to reintegrate them into the labor market. So these are steps which can be done, which should be done, which may cost money, but it's a well invested money to keep society stable. So this is, I think, what has to be done, and I'm very confident about that it will be done. Last point to that, also the social partners, employers and labor unions have to play a very crucial role in this field.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm moving on to a question. Professor Tsuji, would you like to comment?
I think it's a danger is not really low-skilled labor. It's more danger is middle class are really sort of lowering their standard of work. So replacing that class of people are really at risk. So there is a small number of people getting richer and middle class disappearing. And that is more sort of immediate danger, I think. Lower skilled part may not be so much affected by sort of development of AI system. So we need some kind of, I think a human AI cooperation address how we can use that the knowledge or skills of middle class people accumulated in order to improve the performance of AI systems and so on. So it's not really replacing the people, but we have to have a kind of cooperation. Otherwise, our society become very distorted. That's my worry, not low-skilled laborers.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Adisa?
Yeah, can I just add one thing? So I also wanted to point out not only like the low-skilled labor, but what we have to consider, maybe it's kind of more political aspect, but sometimes it's not only about the education, but the training, but the people need some kind of opportunity. And also, for example, like the system has to be changed. For example, right now we are talking through this the Zoom and the video chat, and it somehow really helps for the people who actually, for example, who can't go outside, or maybe some people who may have some kind of disease, or people who have to take care of their children or the parents. And also, if we can change the system, or like more like allow the flexible working style, then it may be kind of like the other people may be available to work. So I think it's not only the technology, but also we have to consider more like the social systems and the other things to consider and I think that in that sense, technology can empower people to be more involved in this working environment.
Yeah, thank you very much for also pointing out the tremendous potential technology actually has in digitalization to also help people. We have a question from Twitter, which is actually about the other side of technology, because one of our viewers is asking, what do technologists and ethicists think about the dangers of AI accelerating the gap in people's access to the digital world, as this corona crisis has further demonstrated? I think this is also the other side of the medal, that not everyone really has the setup for to take part in this digitalized workplace. Mr. Pohl, could you give your opinion on this question? How can policy make sure that this gap is not further widening?
It's a very challenging question indeed, and of course, many people are excluded for various reasons of these modern technologies, either because they are technical immigrants, or because simply there is no internet available, or whatever, etc., etc. I mean, as the reasons for that are so diverse, of course, the answers also have to be. Crucial is, from a technological point of view, that the technology should be, let's say, internet access should be available everywhere. This is one point, and the other is, of course, training of people, especially of technical immigrants. I see very many good examples here in Japan that voluntary organizations, so-called silver centers, train older people how to use computers. I mean, it's not always the state which necessarily needs to act. It's also neighborhood. There are many, many possibilities. And this is, I think, what we have to encourage society to tackle with this problem. And maybe there, as we talked just about, Professor Emma talked about the chances. Maybe that is a good chance for young children to explain their grandparents, please do it that way. It's turning society around. Before grandparents explain things to their grandchildren, now it's the other way around. Why not? It's a chance. It can enrich society. So it has these two aspects, and I hope the more enrichment, the better.
Yes. Thank you very much. Are there any comments from the others? No? Okay, then I would take this up also to move to another category of questions, which is concerning the current situation. So actually the situation we are now in with the COVID-19 pandemic and all the insecurities it brings. And as I already mentioned, right now there's a huge change, actually, not only in the future of work, but in the present work. I think for every one of us, many of you are participating from home office. So my question to all of you would be, how do you think in Germany and Japan is this actual change we are experiencing now contributing to the future of work. So do you think there will be some long-term change in the discussion about the future of work due to these experiences we are having now due to the pandemic? Whoever wants to start, maybe you can share your thoughts on these questions. Yes, Mr. Peisner?
I think although the situation is really critical, I think we can take a lot of positive things out of this situation. For example, in schools here in Germany, we have had a very bad level in terms of digitization in schooling. Now it was within days that pupils get their task from the teachers, that they are discussing with teachers on online platforms and so forth. And similar things are happening in the companies. I've heard about companies who don't have home offices. This has been set up very quickly. They have installed online meeting programs and so forth. I think that this digitalization process has been speeded up a lot by this current situation. And on the other hand, we really learn to appreciate social contacts. Whenever we are having team meetings, we are making the round how everything goes and so forth, and everyone's saying, okay, I can work productively from home, but what I'm really missing is the chat in the tea kitchen and the informal contacts. And I think we will learn from this crisis that this social aspects of work is also a very important thing. And I think, especially when it comes to care or other social professions, I think this is also a very big learning, also in terms of our relationship with artificial intelligence or intelligent technology. What skills will we need in the future? I think it will be social, emotional skills in the first place. It will be communication. This will be very important because this is something technology will not so soon come into the place where it is competing with us.
Thank you very much. Yes, Professor Tsuji?
I think in the same way. That means in Japan, we rely on social interaction without speaking explicitly. So we got lots of meetings without proper discussions and so on and so forth. But because of the current situation, we use like Zoom or this kind of cyber discussion. So our discussion become more verbal and more kind of logical discussions and so on and so forth. So in that sense, we start to see the benefit of this kind of remote working and discussion through language. But of course, there are some kind of parts are missing the current technology, like the previous speaker said. We have a more brainstorming type of discussion we want to have, but current technology doesn't allow us that kind of more emotional, more sort of frequent exchanges through cyberspace. So we need further development of technologies, but we start to find some benefit of this type of gathering as well.
Yes, thank you very much. Mr. Powell, could you also give us your opinion on this one?
I mean, yes, there will be a change in many ways. I see it here in Japan. Recently, there was a law which had passed parliament called workstyle reform, and one part of this law was using telework. Telework in Japan was in particular unpopular in Japan as the way how to work in Japan is very much focused on group work. So it means telework is against group work. And suddenly everybody wants to do telework, not to use the commuter train. So it caused within 2 or 3 weeks a dramatic change here in Japan with very big impacts on fields where we can't even imagine them yet. It means that you don't need to live anymore in these mega cities. Maybe you can move out, which has a big effect on house prices, which may have even effect on the stock market. So just to show up with one small example, how big the effect of that virus on work styles and in many ways how it reflects into society. So yeah, it made at the end. It will very likely have a positive impact. Yes, I'm very much hoping so.
Yes, thank you very much. Please let me just inform you that Professor Tsuji had another meeting coming up right now. We were just talking about the many meetings in Japanese companies. So he had to leave a bit early, but I think we can also conclude this discussion in the last 5 minutes we have. So yeah, Mr. Pohl, thank you very much. And Adisa, what do you think?
I also welcome this situation. Like we are doing the teleconference, and I used to do teleconference with like the people from the other, from like France, Germany, or the China, or the other side of the world. So this situation, we can take this as a kind of opportunity to do the teleconference. But on the other side, I think we also should be aware of this privacy and security issues as well. So we can use this technology, this very new and very effective technology, and it actually supports our work. However, because we can't talk in person to person, and we are actually submitting all the data, not only like the voice records, but also like videos, texts, and even if we kind of we take care of the encryption and we take care of the data, but we actually don't know what kind of Wi-Fi the other people are using, or like who might be behind you and listening. So it's the technology have the two sides. So the very beneficial side, and it actually supports our work, our life. But on the other side, we also have to be care of the security issue, privacy issues, and the human value issues. So as long as we are concerned about it, and as long as we are aware of its risks and also the benefits, I think we can use it wisely.
Yes. Thank you very much. So also, a small warning about the data security. Of course, if we are all using new technologies, which we have never used before, it's especially risky, I think, for many companies also, and for us as well. So do you have any more questions? We are in our last 3 minutes of the meeting, and if you have no more questions here in the conference room, I think I would conclude this web talk. Yes, I think this is fine for you. So let me say thank you again to you, dear speakers from Germany and from Japan, and also our viewers on the live stream. I'm sorry we were not able to take in all the questions. I thought there was a long discussion going on. The link will stay online, so you can also read it later. There were a lot of comments also, which is also very interesting, I think. And I hope that nevertheless you gained some fruitful insights into the plans and visions about the future of work in Japan and Germany. We, as the DWIH Tokyo, would be happy to get some feedback of the viewers, because actually this was our first event held completely online. We had some live streaming last year, but in this form, like everyone participating from their own desk, was actually very new thing for us. So please fill in the evaluation form you will find in the YouTube commentary now. And it's very short, just 5 questions. Please give us your feedback. We are also planning to hold similar events again in the future. It would be great if you could join us again. And if you want to stay updated, please register for our newsletter or our event mailing. You will find the Japanese and the English links also in the YouTube commentary. So once again, thank you to everyone for making this event possible. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you to our viewers. Everyone, please take care in these times. Stay healthy, and we hope to welcome you again soon. Auf Wiedersehen nach Deutschland. Matane in Japan. Bye bye.